going on, guys? Welcome back to Archangel Ministries. You guys know me. You know I generally tend to just come on here, say what I need to say, keep it clean, simple, straightforward. But this particular one, I couldn't really do that with. I've had to spend a rather significant amount of time researching the individual we're going to be discussing tonight. And I've decided that instead of playing through the entire debate that's in question, that we would simply go over some of the highlights, and then where it ends abruptly and the mannerism in which it does, I have some criticism about it, not against Wes in particular, just I probably would have done it a little bit differently, being me. But I want to expose who Billy Carson really is. Or perhaps we should call him by his real name, William Tyrone Karlson. Food for thought. Alright, but enough of that. Let's go ahead and get into things. We'll start off with the interview, some of the highlights, and him being thoroughly humiliated for his lack of knowledge and subjects that could have been disproven with a simple Google search. But then we'll expound on who Billy Carson actually is, who he really serves. Alright, here we go.
You talk about how Jesus was never crucified, which is interesting because my wife, who's a Muslim, they believe that as well. Their beliefs, from what I understand from her, are they don't think that Jesus, as they believe is a prophet, God would have him killed. But I don't think they have any historical evidence, as far as I know, as to what or how or why they believe that. I'm curious for you guys both, and if you want to, I guess, go first, Billy, as to how you came about, like the findings where it seems that Jesus was not crucified, or that's not accurate.
Sure. And in my videos, and if you listen to the podcast, the statement is according to the Sinai Bible. Okay, according to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible. That Bible predates the King James Version of the Bible, and the text there actually is about 12 to 14,000 differences between the Sinai Bible and the King James Version of the Bible, which came much later. And then also one of the things that were interesting is that they discovered the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the Harvard Seminary, which according to some scholars is a little controversial, but they claim that this is an accurate record that Jesus may have even been married, which then, adds more, if that's true, it adds more to the hypothesis that maybe he wasn't crucified. I just personally believe that Jesus was an amazing human being. I don't think that he was the Son of God in the sense that he's God, but that we're all gods. As he said, ye are gods, and that we're to do greater things in him. And I just personally believe that the return of the Christ is the return of the Christ consciousness. When we can all achieve a certain level of knowledge, wisdom, passion, understanding, empathy, love that he came to this planet with, and we get that in our mind and our conscience, and we can act on those incredible emotions and that understanding, that the whole world is going to transform instantaneously. And I think that the second coming is the coming of the Christ consciousness to the planet, not a human being flying back to Earth to save people. That's just my personal understanding of how I've perceived it over many, many years of going through this information and going through all this text.
And Wes, I'm gonna let you respond to that. And again, I mean, this is everyone listening to the show. I'm always like, challenge everything. Learn to critically think and continue to come to your conclusions. Even with Jesus, I'm not personally even waiting on that he has to come back to say, I already know like I said, that strength of God and consciousness is already, I can tap into that right now. So you don't have to wait for him to come back. For those that believe he does, to actually have that like next level of what that's supposed to mean. But Wes, go ahead on for what Billy was talking about, I think with a book in the Harvard Museum, and I heard something about Jesus's wife. That's yeah.
Yeah, well, first let me say I think it's really cool to not just be in the room proverbially with you, Billy, but be able to interact with you. Because I wish I could be there in person. Unfortunately, Toronto, Canada, is a long way away from Florida. It's a little bit of a jaunt. But I really appreciate the fact that you seem to have investigated to a certain degree some of these facts. Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
When you say the Sinai Bible, what are you referring to specifically?
It's the biblical text that was written. It made it into you can actually look it up on Amazon. It's a Bible called, I have a version at home. It's called the Sinai Bible, right, from Mount Sinai. I'm assuming that's the mountain that they're referencing there. But they put together their own version of the biblical text prior to the King James Version being put out.
Sure. So when you refer to the Sinai Bible, would you be referring to Codex Sinaiticus? Like the codex that comes... Okay. That's why I was trying to get some clarification. Because, so you can actually go and see... Codex Sinaiticus is at the British Library. So you can go and see it. It's on display. And the British Library has actually digitized the entire manuscript. So I work with manuscripts in my linguistic work. I'm an expert on early Christian scribal culture, and particularly in Greek and Coptic manuscripts. I actually have a facsimile. So I have a photocopy that was done by the British Library of Codex Sinaiticus that I work with in my office. So I have it here. And the only reason I asked for clarification is because I want to make sure that what I'm addressing is actually what you mean.
Gotcha.
And not addressing something else. Because the Codex Sinaiticus in particular is just it's a 4th century Greek manuscript. Mm-hmm. It comes from approximately between 325 and 350 AD. And its text of the Gospels reads almost identical to the modern Greek text that we develop translations from. So my curiosity is just simply in kind of exploring when you say that it denies the crucifixion or that the crucifixion isn't there. I mean, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up the end of, say, Matthew 27, mm-hmm. where it has Jesus being crucified. And that's in Codex Sinaiticus, or, the John 19, or any of the other ones. So I think my confusion is that it doesn't read any differently. So actually, are you able to pull up a website with the viewers or listeners or whatever be able to see that?
Right, and to make sure I have the right the version that I'm looking at.
While he's pulling that up too, like I keep saying to all the people that aren't scientists traveling the world and linguists, I don't even know how to pronounce it the right way, like me.
Yeah, linguists.
What cyanide? I keep thinking of cyanide, like the poison. Sinai Bible. So
right.
Is that like a version? So from my own knowledge that I know, like when I really studied all this, what I thought was interesting about the Bible was how many different eyewitness. I studied C.S. Lewis back in the day. How many different eyewitnesses and stuff there were, and they went on purpose to mention so many other names that they were able to cross-reference throughout history and throughout those times, from my understanding. And those were different things that I always thought were kind of interesting that I felt was a good concept of proof. And then I want Billy to answer. And also, I'm just curious, the Sinai Bible, where was that piece
I found
discovered?
the text where I was referencing. Actually, I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
Okay, yeah. Well, so that's good. So let's deal with that too, because I've actually worked with. There are 2 manuscripts of the Gospel of Barnabas. The Gospel of Barnabas is a really interesting document because it is a known forgery, and so that's why I think it's important to get to these sources. So at the very start of the Gospel of Barnabas, which we only have 2 copies of. One is in Italian and one is in Spanish. We see right off the bat that the Gospel of Barnabas, not to be confused with either the Epistle of Barnabas or the Acts of Barnabas, which are 2 apocryphal documents from the 2nd century.
Mhm.
But the Gospel of Barnabas in particular, we know it's a forgery because it does things like in chapter 92, it says that Jesus spent 40 days on Mount Sinai, and then he came to the Jordan River and he walked to Jerusalem. But Mount Sinai is more than a week's journey away from Jerusalem, and neither Mount Sinai nor Jerusalem are close to the Jordan River. So never mind there not being a route from the Jordan River to like around Mount Sinai or going to Jerusalem. But there are internal problems with the Gospel of Barnabas, which indicate that it shows no actual indication of evidence of coming from or even having knowledge of first century Jewish understanding. It actually says Jesus is the Christ, but not the Messiah, which indicates that whoever the author is, he didn't know that those were the same words. And I think a bigger problem is that the Gospel of Barnabas actually paraphrases Dante's Inferno, which was written in 1314. So there's a lot of internal evidences that disqualify the Gospel of Barnabas, never mind the fact that we don't have any evidence of it prior to the 14th century, and none in any other language other than Middle Age Italian Italian and Spanish. But the internal content of the Gospel of Barnabas disqualifies it from being ancient. And then the fact that it's doing things like paraphrasing Dante, or it also refers to a rule of the time of Jubilee, which was changed in the Middle Ages from what it was in the biblical year of Jubilee. And it goes with the Middle Ages concept, not the ancient concept. So I think what I'm getting at is, so I'm a historian, and I deal with sources. So when I'm looking at sources, I want to make sure that I have a methodology by which I approach any type of source. So if there is something that denies the crucifixion, I want to make sure that I'm analyzing it and that the methodology by which I analyze it actually reveals that the content can be accurately tied to the event. So if we're talking about, say, Codex Sinaiticus, that's in the 4th century. Now that is, I would agree with you, Billy, our oldest copy of the Bible in the sense of cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation copy of the Bible.
Right.
The problem is that we have individual copies of all 4 Gospels going back hundreds of years before Codex Sinaiticus. So I have a facsimile behind me of P66. This is a late 2nd century copy of the Gospel of John. I work with this particular manuscript. I can just show the screen right here. This is an almost complete copy of the Gospel of John. And it
Is that the
has the
papyrus by
crucifixion.
any chance?
Yeah,
That's
so
very good idea.
papyrus is just the what it's made out of. So
I got that from
Yeah.
ChatGPT, by the way.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
guys, I'm just
I can
trying to sound
actually-
smart for a second.
I have that papyrus at home.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Well,
Yeah, so I'll show you this. So the documents you actually see on my bookshelf behind me are facsimile papyri that I've made. So when I was in Egypt last summer, I went and I made for me some papyrus sheets. And so I take these papyrus sheets, which are made from the papyrus plant, and then when I go and I look at actual manuscripts, so I was at the University of Philadelphia last summer, and I went and I saw a document called P1, which is a 3rd century fragment of the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew. And so what I did is I sat down with that original and I produced a facsimile. So I copied the text. First of all, I cut it out with an X-Acto knife in not the original 3rd century one on my papyrus. I cut out with an X-Acto knife this guy, and then I copied the text transcriptionally on the front and the back. So papyrus is just simply, it's what it's made out of. And so there's categorizing systems, and the standard one is called the Gregory Allant categorizing system. And so sometimes you'll see when manuscripts are mentioned, they'll have a GA and then a number behind it. If it's made of papyrus, you simply abbreviate the word papyrus to P, and then you have the numbering system. So P66, what I showed you earlier, that's on the categorizing system. It's the 66th manuscript that was put into the system. It's from the Gospel of John. I also have, P46 and P47 on my shelf, which includes all 4 Gospels and Acts from the 2nd and 3rd centuries. So the only hesitation I have with what you said, Billy, is that we have single copies of the Gospels that can be dated to the 2nd century that all do have the crucifixion. And so if we're relying on something like the Gospel of Barnabas, which is not just like, it's not that there's debate about it, it's that it's a known forgery. I mean, no one's referring to the Gospel of Barnabas as anything other than...
If you say it's a known forgery, and but I'm going to go with that. Let's talk about the Old Testament a little bit and leading up into the New
Well,
Testament.
hold on, because do you mind if I address the Gospel of Jesus' wife?
Sure, go ahead.
What was her name?
Yeah,
I'm like trying to write notes like I know what I'm doing, but I'm just curious.
so the Gospel of Jesus' wife doesn't actually mention. So oftentimes what happens is that the text of the Gospel of Jesus' wife is kind of paralleled with the Gospel of Philip, which mentions that that Jesus would kiss Mary Magdalene on the mouth. And so those are kind of used in parallel to kind of for this argument that Jesus was married. So the Gospel of Jesus' wife is in the Harvard Library. However, the reason we know it's also not legitimate is because even though the manuscript, the papyrus that it's on, was carbon dated to the 4th century, the text was actually copied from a PDF version of the Gospel of Thomas known as Grandin's Interlinear. And there was a mistake in the Coptic text of Grandin's Interlinear that was copied into the Gospel of Jesus' wife. So we know that this is not a legitimate document, even though the papyrus is ancient, and this happens a lot with forgeries. I have a couple of friends who have actually worked on projects that have revealed forgeries within Dead Sea Scroll manuscripts and within other ancient Christian papyri. But the reason why we know the Gospel of Jesus' wife, and that Karen King, who kind of vouched for it and she lost a lot of credibility, unfortunately, for her, and she's admitted that it's a fake as well, was because we can tie it directly to not copying from an ancient text, but actually copying from an online version of the Gospel of Thomas in a PDF form. And the mistake on that PDF form was copied into the text that was borrowed in the phraseology of Jesus' wife. So I just point that out is, once again, with our sourcing, I think we need to make sure that we're going towards not just early sources, but actually credible sources. And unfortunately, neither the Gospel of Barnabas nor the Gospel of Jesus' wife are credible sources in terms of actually, and agreed upon by not just the vast majority of scholarship, but I don't know anybody in the field of papyrology, paleography, historiography, who actually refers to these documents as being legitimate.
Okay, so those were just some of the basic highlights from the first section of the interview, okay? It goes on for another hour and a half. I mean, it was like 2 hours, and then eventually they get into Old Testament stuff, and both the host and Billy really show their entire lack of knowledge of not only who Christ is, but who God himself is, and the reason why he was that way in the Old Testament, the reason for the flood, the reason why certain groups of people were to be wiped out and just completely wiped from civilization. Now, as we all know, as far as the origins of the giants and the things going on the earth at that time, there are two opposing theories. There's the sons of Seth theory, and then there's the fallen angel doctrine, right? Now, if we actually go into Genesis, the sons of God came into the daughters of men and took of them wives whom they would choose and bore children, and there were giants in the earth in those days, mighty men, men of renown. If we go into the book of Enoch, now I'm not saying the book of Enoch is canonical, but it does hold significant historical value, because what's in the book of Enoch is what we as Satanists are taught from day one. We know what the demons are. We know where they come from. We know about the Nephilim. We know about the giants. We know that they still walk the earth. We know about the different types of cryptids that are offspring of these fallen ones, part of their genetic experimentation and everything else. What the problem with the Sons of Seth theory is that it is totally lacking, and it is a forced belief system that was forced upon the church. The church didn't have any say in the matter whatsoever, and the guy that created it is actually responsible for writing down the Talmud, in which the Talmud states that Christ himself is the offspring of Lilith, the demon, and Samael, the fallen one. Okay, so what credibility is actually there? And then I want to say it was Julius Africanus took up that particular Sons of Seth theory, made it official church doctrine, and said anyone who taught apart from that would be considered a heretic and would be expelled from the church. So this was a forced opinion. Now, we really have to get into the meat of the subject here, okay? So who is Billy Carson? What other types of ideals is he running his mouth about and spreading to people and using to draw people away from Christ? Let's take a look at that real quick.
You think Jesus was an alien?
I think Jesus was half human, half alien, and I'll tell you why. When you look at the Apocrypha text, you discover, first of all, in the regular Bible, you discover he's born of a virgin birth, right? But then in the Apocrypha text, you discover that his grandmother was also born of a virgin birth. So it seems like this establishment of a bloodline there specifically. When you read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, you discover that he talks about he developed the ability to incarnate at will on and in any plane that he desires. That's pretty powerful stuff. He's saying he can come back however he wants and when he wants and in any dimension that he wants. He even talks about having rejuvenation chambers, which is what I believe the Serapeum is, located in Saqqara in Egypt, is one of his rejuvenation chambers, where they would actually create bodies and put bodies in these gigantic megaton stone boxes made of granite and diorite, which are still radioactive, by the way. You can take your Geiger counter, they're still radioactive. They have an energy source coming out of them. And then he said that I would transfer my consciousness from one body to the next. He would leave another body in there rejuvenating for 100 years, and he'd come back and get it. And he'd do that over and over again. And by that method, he lived through eons.
In your book, you talk about, in the Emerald Tablets, you talk about how the Emerald Tablets came 36,000 years before Jesus even walked the earth.
Yes.
And Jesus, when we talk about Jesus, he was a student of the Egyptian mysteries.
Yeah.
He learned reincarnation. He learned, what else in India, right? And meditation.
In India, he learned the mystic arts. In Tibet, he learned Qigong and Reiki, healing with the hands.
Yeah.
Confirmed by the Dalai Lama, by the way, in recent times. As the information has been handed down and passed down from Dalai Lama to Dalai Lama. This was confirmed through also Robert Grant, who visited with the Dalai Lama, verified just a few years ago, not too long ago.
Okay, so you heard a lot of talk in there, and this is just a snippet of what he's promoting. Okay, now we're going to go a lot deeper because personally I have some theories about him, but all this is culminating up to what my personal theory is, and I promise I'm going to give it to you here shortly. We're going to wrap things up here very soon, so stay with me just a little while longer. But you heard references to the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, right? Now, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth don't actually exist. There was a gentleman by the last name of Doriel who claimed that he found these tablets, never turned into a museum, never showed them to anybody, and that all of this stuff was legitimate and written down, but there was never any evidence, never any proof that he actually found those, and he claimed he found them. I won't say it was in the Great Pyramid. They were never there. Years later down the road, he claimed that those tablets were given to him via automated writing. This may sound familiar to you. Aleister Crowley's entire book, the Book of the Law, right, was done through automated writing by a demon that referred to himself as I was. Okay? So we see a very interesting parallel between the Emerald Tablets of Thoth and Doriel, along with Aleister Crowley and I was. Alright? So, I mean, how much more evidence do you need that this is another false claim generated and based on falsified documents that do not exist? It is all based on a lie. And this isn't even the worst that he's said or done. Let me show you.
Right away when he handed me a bottle of water, I said, oh, here comes another one. He was trying to convert me into Christianity, right? He needed a bottle of water. I said, you know what, this time I'm going to take this damn water. I'm going to have a conversation with these people. And the guy goes, have you taken Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior? I said, no, why would I do that? He goes, what do you mean? I said, I am God. You're God? What are you talking about? Yeah, I'm God and God is me. The same divine spark that created everything in the entire universe is the same divine spark that's inside of every atom inside of my body. And so by that method, I am God and God is me. And so are you. And so is this young lady as well. We're all the same. We're all part of that same one divine consciousness.
The term Christ consciousness, what is it? Where does it come from? This is something that we've seen spewed time and time again in New Age doctrine. All right? You see this in certain forms of Wicca. You see this in certain forms of quote-unquote white magic, which doesn't exist. Magic is magic. It all has to do with demons and everything. You know, we're not even going to get into that right now. I wrote an entire chapter on that, so we can get into that later. But Christ consciousness actually stems from the Church of Scientology. Or not Scientology, yeah, the Church of Christ Scientists. There we go. Let me get my head right. Now, the person that started that, her name was Mary Baker Eddy. All right? Now, Mary Baker Eddy claimed that there were over 44,000 errors in the Bible and that she was the only one that could correct them. I believe the name of the book she first released was Understanding Christ and Key to the Scriptures. I may be off on the title, but I know it was in Key to the Scriptures. Now, her entire movement was based on Christ consciousness, having the mindset of Christ, being one with Him in mind, right? Now, the term Christ consciousness itself actually stemmed from followers of her, then they used it as a way to describe what it was she was teaching. Christ consciousness. And we've seen it develop and employed all over the world now. We've seen preachers like Kenneth Copeland make this claim. There was one sermon he did where he was talking about he gets up in the morning, he reads the Bible, and anytime he's reading the Bible where it says, I am God, I get a big smile on my face and say, yes, sir, I am too. You're not a God. Carson is not a God. Okay? He's not. He's really not. He's a con artist. And I can prove to you that he's a con artist. The man has an arrest record from Florida. And we're going to cover that in just a minute too. But it is also my opinion that he is a Luciferian. What evidence do I have for that? I'm about to show you.
The devil. Who is the devil in your eyes? Is he also an alien, or is it not a real person, not a real spirit? Who is the devil?
Let me tell you what happened. So you go again into the ancient tablets, you discover that, and Yahweh, who's in the Bible, is known as God, right? Yahweh is known in the ancient text as Satan, the Lord of Eden, Edin. The land between the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers is where they had the Eden, Edin. And when he has his outdoor laboratories, what I like to call it, where they discovered that mating these people together would work if they had enough genetic diversity. So what happens is his brother, Enki, who's now known as Satan, he comes in and he starts talking to the people there. And he starts telling them, it wasn't just Adam and Eve he was talking to, there were other people there. And he was telling them how powerful they really were, and that the mysteries of the universe was inside of their body, and that they had the ability to ascend even to a higher level than even them. And so these people then realized that they weren't animals. They clothed themselves. And by the time this Yahweh character, also known as Enlil, comes back, Satan, he realizes what's happened, that his brother has given them the apple. What's the apple? Knowledge. And so he gets pissed off. And he curses his brother, and he tells them, never listen to him again. He's evil. He's the devil. He wants to hurt you. That's where this whole devil thing pops up from. It comes from the Sumerian tablets. Okay? That's where it comes from. It comes from the Sumerian tablets. Enki and Enlil, two brothers fighting each other because one brother didn't like what the other brother was doing to people.
Okay. Here's my evidence for him being Luciferian. Now, we all know that anyone that doesn't follow Christ is quite potentially a spirit of Antichrist, right? I mean, this is stated in Scripture, okay? However, the stuff that he just spewed is very closely held Luciferian doctrine that has been decorated with ancient alien theory, okay? Do not mistake the ancient alien nonsense and the Emerald Tablets of Thoth crap that he pushes, nor the ancient Mesopotamian, the Enuma Elish, yeah, that's it, the Enuma Elish, doctrines that he's trying to base his theories on is anything solid, because they're not. This is just garb and decorations to hang and push out his Luciferian doctrine through in order to create a subliminal message that is going to rest inside the subconscious minds of the public that don't understand what it is they're listening or adhering to. Now, I'm about to show you, beyond shadow of a doubt, this is indeed Luciferian doctrine. Okay, so here we are. We're just doing a basic quick web search. This is the easiest way I can find to actually bring this stuff up. We are looking into someone named Madame H.P. Blavatsky. For those of you who don't know who she is one of the founding members of the Council of Theosophy. She considered herself a messianic type figure that was going to usher in the age of the ancient religions. And she herself was a high-ranking Luciferian high priestess. Let's see if we can get a clear image of her. I'm sorry for the screen. This is not cooperating with me the best that I thought, but hopefully you can see her image right here on the right side of your screen now. This is Madame H.P. Blavatsky. Now, this is one of her quotes, all right? We're going to pull this up real quick from her book, The Secret Doctrine. Satan, the enemy of God, is in reality the highest divine spirit. In this case, it is but natural to view Satan, the serpent of Genesis, as the real creator and benefactor, the father of spiritual mankind, for it is he who was the harbinger of light, bright, radiant Lucifer, who opened the eyes of the automaton created by Jehovah. She goes on to claim in her writings that Lucifer himself is the great creator, and that Jehovah, or Yahweh, is actually the devil. This is exactly what you just heard Carson claiming in his intellectual nonsense. Now, Blavatsky the Satanist, Luciferianism in Theosophy, and its feminist implications. We're just looking at this real quick just because I wanted to give you some basic history on it. In September 1875, Helena Purchovna Blavatsky co-founded the Theosophical Society in New York City. Colonel Henry Steele Olcott, lawyer and journalist, was elected its first president. Blavatsky, however, became the chief ideologist, drawing authority from communications concerning esoteric matters she claimed to receive from the mysterious Mahatmas, or masters. Allegedly, with their help, she composed the foundation text of Theosophy, Isis Unveiled, and The Secret Doctrine. Both became worldwide bestsellers, and as is well known, the society came to occupy a position as the most important international movement of its time in the realm of alternative spirituality. Now, what's not mentioned here is this goes directly into the formation of the United Nations. The Council of Theosophy and the United Nations are intertwined. They are married, tightly knit. The United Nations stemmed from the Theosophical Society. And as a matter of fact, the German guy from the 1940s with the funny mustache, you know, the one that really hated Israel, the Jewish people, all that stuff. He actually slept with a copy of her book next to his bed. I just wanted to fill that in for you. Okay, so here's the question. If he was strictly New Age and came to all of this conjecture on his own, why is he stating Luciferian principles? And it also begs to question, as everything does in the realm of Satanism, one answer just leads to more questions, right? Where did he come from? I mean, it's kind of like he just up and appeared one day, right? I mean, first time I ever heard of him was when he showed up on Joe Rogan and all the insane nonsense he was claiming on there. The Patrick Bet David podcast, all the psychotic crap he was saying on there. Where did he come from? Which also begs the question to me, what demon did he make a pact with in order to obtain wealth and recognition? We had another Satanist back in the day that did the same thing, Anton LaVey. He was approached by Lucifer one day and told that he needed to create a form of Satanism that was appealing to the public. So he created Pop Satanism, the Church of Satan, right? In which he presented Satan not as an actual entity, but as an element or a force of nature, if you will. And when he did that, people could then see Satanism and view it as more relatable, something they could actually get into. Is that the same thing that's going on with Billy Carson? I mean, we've already proven beyond a shadow of doubt near about every single thing that he quotes is a lie. Easily disproven, but most people will not disprove it because, like he claims, all the other people out there, they don't want Christianity because God holds you to a moral standard, right? They want to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want, but they're still seeking the supernatural in the process. That is why New Age religions appeal to them so much. And like I said before, this whole I am God sentiment, you see this a lot in the New Age movement, especially in the realms of Wicca. Now, another interesting aspect of this is Wicca. I forget the guy's name that developed it right now. I'll get on it later. But the gentleman who developed Wicca was a member of the OTO along with Aleister Crowley. And he based Wicca around Druidic texts and rituals that they had uncovered. Now, the problem with those texts and the rituals and incantations that he found was they were incomplete. So he asked Aleister Crowley, the Satanist, to complete them. So there's your tie-in between Satanism, Luciferianism, the New Age movement, and Wicca. All right? Hopefully that makes sense. Now, what we have to move on to next is, like I stated earlier, where did Billy Carson come from? In order to find that, we need to dig into his background. There are a lot of stories that he's claimed about his family, his upbringing, and everything else, claiming that he was reading scripture and doing reports on the Bible from the age of 3 years old. I don't know of any 3-year-olds that can even read, much less comprehend scripture. Do you? He also claimed that it was his father that was pushing this stuff on him. Yet on a recent interview that happened not too long ago, actually it wasn't even an interview, he deleted the video because he did a 3-hour rant after this debate was made public. And he actually goes into his past and claimed that his father was a drunk, an alcoholic, right? And that his father had been beaten 2 times by cops for no reason whatsoever, no justified reason. And that the second time it happened is what actually led to his death. But in another interview, he claimed that when he was 7 years old, that he had come face to face with alien greys. And what they told him shifted the trajectory of his life and made him interested in physics and math and science and everything else. And then and what they told him and new beliefs he adhered to is what caused the division and destruction of his family. Now, if that's true, and that's a big if because the guy lies constantly, but if that is actually true, then that explains the reason why he hates Christ and why he hates Christianity. Because he allowed himself to be deceived by demonic fallen entities and cause the division and destruction of his family himself because of their deception. That's a tough pill to swallow. But Billy Carson isn't even his real name. His real name is William Tyrone Karlson. And how do I know this? I know this because I did a background check on the guy. And he's got arrest records in Broward County, Florida. He was arrested for fraud and identity theft, according to the officer that actually made the arresting report. And this is public information. I can pull it up and show it to you right now. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and do that. And here we are. Broward County Sheriff's Office, right? Look at that picture right there. That is Mr. Billy Carson. But if we go down here, what's this? Oh my, that's not his name. Good Lord. William Tyrone Karlson. Yeah. AKA Billy Hamrick Carson. Uh-oh. One of these things is not like the other. Charge initiation date, 12/15/2013. Fraud. Utter false instrument. Possession of fictional unlawfully issued driver's license. In other words, that is 2 driver's licenses that he had with his picture and somebody else's name on it. Last time I checked, that was identity theft. Now then, just so you know that I am not filling you full of nonsense here, let's go. Safari, let's hop on the internet. Broward County, Florida, arrest records. Enter. Alright, county clerks. Alright, there we go. Case search, public. Let's load that up. Alright. Last name, Karlson. First name, William. Middle name, Tyrone. Search. Oh, look at this. State of Florida versus William Tyrone Karlson, 3rd-degree felony. Another one, 3rd-degree felony. Wow. Oh, what's this? A modification of sentence? Oh my. Let's have a look. Okay. Gender, male, race, black. Complexion, medium brown, 6'3", weight 215. My. That sounds a lot like him to me, does it not you? And this is all stuff that I've researched and actually checks out. This is the court documents for the arrest record that I just showed you. Now look at all that. 12/18/2013. Sunrise PD. Bond type, $1,000. posted and discharged. Dolphin bail bonds. And according to their records, yes, this was exactly what it was. That is the company that actually bailed him out. Now, the reason why he's done a lot to actually bury this stuff, and he originally entered a not guilty plea and then changed his plea and then accepted a deal from the prosecutor in order to get out of jail. But everything is here. I mean, you guys can look it up yourself. So the question I pose is a simple one. If he was a con back in 2013, right? Do you think he's not a con artist now? I've clearly showed you every single document that he's lied about. Every last one of them.
Look, guys, this is just the tip of the iceberg regarding this particular douchebag. Alright? It's very clear that he has a spirit of Antichrist. It's very clear that he hates the biblical, actual, historical Christ himself. It's very clear that he hates and despises Christianity. And so this is just the tip of the iceberg. A friend of his actually made a video and actually admitted that he has witnessed Billy himself participating and practicing rituals. You know, if you really think you're a god and you really are one, rituals shouldn't be necessary for you to be able to obtain your goals or what it is you desire. Just another piece of evidence in who he truly is, right? Now, I'm not telling you that you guys have to agree with me, but I think I've given you more than enough evidence of who Billy Carson is for you to make your own logical decision. And we haven't even gone into the aftermath of what took place after that debate. He became an unhinged psycho. And while I'm on that subject, the gentleman that hosted the debate, I believe his name was Mark, I feel sorry for the guy. He has been around Billy for too long and has corrupted his view of Christianity and his view of Christ. Based on some of the statements he made during that debate himself, it clearly shows that he has absolutely zero understanding of Old Testament scripture and therefore does not understand who God is and does not know who Christ truly is. Pray for him. He's going to need help. There's been a lot of people bashing him, attacking him online. Don't attack the guy. Encourage him to get closer to Jesus. If you have advice for him and books and stuff he can read that are going to explain things, I personally would recommend Dr. Michael Heiser's The Unseen Realm. I think you should read that one first and foremost, right off the bat. I think it would do him some good. Because he needs to understand why God had those certain people and stuff destroyed. But having said that, I mean, he fell victim to Billy's narcissistic personality. Right after the debate and everything was done, he started questioning and talking with Wesley Huff about releasing it to him and everything else. He went psycho and drew up some sort of legal papers and showed up at the guy's house at 2:30 a.m., which is caught on a Ring doorbell, just to hand him those papers and tell him that if he publishes that or it ever makes public, that he's going to sue him for $1 million. And that is actually legitimate. There's plenty of videos out there that go over it. I didn't want to cover the aftermath and Billy's wild 3-hour rant of nothing but excuses and hatred for Christians that he made post-debate, that he deleted almost immediately after, because even his own fans took offense to it. So, if you guys want me to cover that, I can still find the video, and I don't mind doing it, but you gotta let me know in the comments, because otherwise, I'm really not going to worry about it that much. I think I've made my case here and clearly shown you guys who Billy Carson actually is. He's a con. He's a fraudster. He's a Luciferian puppet. That's it. If you guys know anyone that follows his crap, please feel free to send this video to them. And I'm not the only person that's done good coverage of this, so seek it out, find it, share these videos, not just mine, but the others that are out there. Share them around and show these to people and expose Carson for who he really is. And let's win these people that he stole from Christ back. And let's take some of those that have never known Christ that are following him and bring them to Jesus as well. Alright guys, that's going to do it for me. I'm going to wrap this up and end it here. God bless you guys. Have a good night. Stay safe. Keep packing.